Dr. Vernon Coleman on the Richie radio show, national newspaper columnist, successful author, successful GP, left medicine, practicing medicine of his own volition. Why in the name of God are they doing this when they know the damage it's doing?
I need to tell you a story because it's quite long-winded where it started from, but I can summarize it. There are people around, of course, who will say that the whole caboodle, what we know as Agenda 21, actually started centuries ago. You could probably trace it back to Adam and Eve muttering about something, but really, I've traced it back, I believe, to about 1909, 111 years ago. The Andrew Carnegie Foundation, who pointed out, and I think they were the first modern people to point out, that there is a need for something to control people. And what they thought was war was the best thing to control people. Jump to 1932, Columbia University had the idea for using a new form of currency using energy, and they called what they devised as the new currency technocracy. And this was making the world run by scientists, abolishing private property because that's not very effective or efficient, education simply preparing students for the work for which they'd been prepared. And Aldous Huxley was so amazed by this technocracy at Columbia University that he wrote Brave New World. Everything I'm telling you can check out on the web. I'm not giving references because we'll be here till next Wednesday. And then in 1961, there was the meeting at the Iron Mountain, the infamous Iron Mountain meeting, where a group of Kennedy insiders, all I think of whom, or at least most of whom were Bilderbergers, which had just been put together, they resurrected the old idea, the Andrew Carnegie Foundation idea, about the necessity of war and the need, believe it or not, for slavery, the need to actually control people. And they had the idea, they were the first people to have the idea of creating a massive amount of pollution, then making people feel guilty and making them clear up all the pollution they'd created. Then we jumped to 1968. The next important thing was when the Club of Rome was created. They're important because they come in a bit later on. A couple of years after that, the World Economic Forum, it wasn't called that until 87, but they're the complete morons who have these meetings at Davos, which I stupidly for years would just thought were a wonderful place for Bonio to go and flex his checkbook or whatever. Yeah. but it wasn't. The World Economic Forum was something far worse and far more significant. But then the next big thing was in 1976, the United Nations, a bunch of completely unelected bureaucrats, decided that they wanted to control the world's land and to control the population because they decided there were too many people living on planet Earth. And they decided that we all had to be treated as criminals and we all had to put the community first above individuals. And then in 1980, they invented sustainable development, of which everyone has heard, because sustainable development, of course, is what Prince Charles and all the other people who believe in Agenda 21 use as their religion. And they set up a commission to look into creating a new world order. Now we go back to the Club of Rome, 1991. They decided they needed to find a way to motivate people, to worry people, to put fear into people so that they could control them as part of the Agenda 21, which hadn't then developed, but it was what the United Nations wanted. And they came up with global warming, which was an old idea, which has been reheated, if you'll pardon the terrible pun, because in the 19th century, global warming had many times been introduced as a problem, and it had been poo-pooed and proved to be a load of rubbish. So that's 1991. Club of Rome says, hey, look, if you want to terrify everybody on the planet so much that you can control them, tell them that the planet's getting hotter and it's their fault and we've got to do something about it. So, thankfully, for them, in 1992, there was a United Nations conference in Brazil, and that's when Agenda 21 was born. And if you haven't heard of Agenda 21, boy, have you been missing something, because Agenda 21 is the reason for COVID-19 being dramatically over-exaggerated. It's a reason for all the fear. It's a reason for the masks and the compliance that goes with it. It's a reason for social distancing. It's the reason for the vaccines. It's the reason for everything. It's exactly the same as the technocracy idea that Aldous Huxley turned into Brave New World. 178 world leaders immediately signed up to the Agenda 21 thing, the communitarianism, the idea that the community is everything. And guess who was there at the beginning, cheering away on the sidelines? Blair and Clinton and Gore, who then produced his discredited DVD, which it was just full of false rubbish. And they came up then with carbon trading, a huge way to make money. Doesn't make any difference to anything, because the people who are creating who are creating the problems simply buy carbon credits from other people, and the carbon credit traders, Al Gore and co., make a ton of money. And there's an ex-Liberal MP, by the way, who now imports all the biomass, or a lot of the biomass that we burn, because everybody thinks it's good, like solar energy and wind energy. They talk about all the energy we're getting from non-fossil fuels, but most of it's actually coming from wood. They're burning trees, call it biomass. They're burning trees, which the planet desperately needs. Burning that and saying that's making the planet greener. And it was about 92, I think, that Prince Idiot Charles got involved. And this is all about power and money. It was all about getting control of the entire world. And the things that they decided even then, and which they'd been working towards, and which the European Union worked towards, because by then the European Union had become involved in this early Agenda 21 plan, was getting local governments, forcing local governments to force said, we don't want any more of your rubbish, we've got enough of our own, and we sent it back. But half of it ended up floating around in Eastern European countries, where it was taken to be burned or taken to be put into dumps, and half of it just ended up floating around the streets. So all those people wasting water, washing out yogurt cartons, that's what happened to your rubbish. But it was all part of a training program, a compliance program, the same as the masks are part of a compliance program. And the Agenda 21, they also wanted to get rid of, to take people out of rural areas. Because if you get people out of rural areas and you put them all in smart cities, big tower blocks, you can control them easier. Their argument was people in the country, they waste a lot of energy travelling about. So they've been trying very effectively to get rid of people from the countryside by giving them terrible broadband, by not repairing water supplies, by refusing to allow people to take water from boreholes, by not mending roads and so on. And they also decided to dumb down education and to make it so children were simply educated for jobs. They weren't educated to think, because they don't want people to be educated to think, because then they might see through what's happening. And then after this, these are early days after 9/11, when the Americans had all those incredibly oppressive laws, and we got Tony Blair telling us we had to have ID cards, and there were new laws popping up all over the place because of terrorism, because of disease, because we were having too much to do with animals, either as pets, or we were having them and eating them, or we were wandering around the world. We must stop travel. We must stop people travelling about. This is all a control thing. Knock down old houses, because although they might be very solid and efficient, we don't want them. We want people living in apartment blocks. And then they came up with regionalization, which is a part of globalization, which of course is what the EU wanted when they broke up the United Kingdom. They gave Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland little quasi-parliaments, because then the Scots and the Welsh would think they were on the route to independence, and actually they're going on the exact opposite route to independence. They tried to divide up England into 9 regions, offered the people of North East England a chance to vote on it, and the people in North East England said, no, thank you very much, we don't want any of that. Remember John Prescott?
I do indeed. Yeah.
And in the south east of England, this was all done to London Parliament's part of this, but one of the UK England regions, and it was so blatant But I remember writing about this in a book called England Are England, How to Print. No, it isn't How to Print. And that was in 2001, I think. And everybody was laughing at me because I said, what they're going to do is they're going to break up England into 9 regions. And one of the regions of the southeast England region was tucked in with a bit of northern France because of this attempt to destroy England. They were the Agenda 21 people and the EU realised that they had to destroy England as a force, and they could get rid of the Scottish nationalists by promising them Scottish independence. One of the basic principles of Agenda 21 is that there is no sovereignty, no nationalities. So they want to get rid of all that. So the Scots, who think they're voting for independence, are actually voting to be part, by wanting to go back into the EU, is they're actually voting for their own demise as a country. The other thing that the Agenda 21 wanted was no privacy, and to shame everybody, because it was decided that this was the best way to control people. No privacy at all. So that's what's been happening with all the things that you can think of. You think of all the things that have happened, and they want to get rid of transport. They want to get rid of cars. Look what's happening in cities. They have all these cycle lanes in little roads that aren't wide enough for cycle lanes, so the cars can't get through. And where they don't do that, they put all this crazy road furniture in order to control the traffic, to make driving even
more difficult.
Increase the taxes, have all these diesel scandals. The whole thing is planned to stop people using cars. If you want to drive your car into London, it's a nightmare because you've got to sign up for all sorts of really bizarre things. And then there's the idea of changing the whole climate. Bill Gates, as you know, is invested. Bill Gates has invested in all of these things. He's invested in laboratory food, where they're growing this fake meat in laboratories, because they're going to get rid of farms. And the farmers who think that their big job now is to try to persuade the British government to give them a common agricultural policy deal, the farmers really should be trying to work out how much money they're going to get when they're compulsorily purchased, because there ain't going to be any farming, because it's all going to be made artificially in labs. And then you've got Bill Gates, who's spraying. People are not going to believe this, but it's true. You can check it out. Bill Gates has invested in a company which is got planes up in the sky, spraying powder around. And I feel like a lunatic saying it, but honestly, you can check it all out. It's all there on the internet. Just put in the words and you get.
Yeah, I can endorse that. I've known about geoengineering schemes going back years. I've heard from pilots and even environmentalists. I used to speak to an environmentalist in Hawaii whose surname escapes me. His name is Bruce. Lovely guy from Earthwatch. Really credible guy. And he was able, I know you're talking about something slightly different now, but he was able to determine massive levels of aluminium and barium and strontium in the soil. Hawaii gets sprayed to death there. All of this is real, and you shouldn't certainly feel bonkers when you say it, because it's a stone cold fact. If somebody is denying now that spraying is going on in our atmosphere, well, you're either obtuse or you're stupid, in my opinion. Gloves are off now.
Yeah. So there you go. And the chemtrails. Chemtrails are real.
Chemtrails,
They are deliberately depopulating the world, because everybody from Prince Philip down thinks there's too many people, including Boris Johnson.
Yeah.
And so they cut off the elderly and the sick. It's not a coincidence. It's happening. Everything, the microchips, the ID cards, the brainwashing, getting rid of the police to bring in the military, education just so that they're training children who will not belong to their parents by the time we finish this. They will belong to the state, because there's evidence already. They've already tried to push through laws in Scotland, the Scottish Parliament, where the Scottish Parliament would actually effectively have guardianship over children.
That's right. All of this is the named. Hang on a second. This is really important now. This is the named person scheme, isn't it?
Yeah.
Where somebody would be appointed as a kind of an overseer, or I think you used the perfect word, guardian, for every child in the country. That person might be an authority figure. It might be a doctor. It might be a policeman or woman. This is scary shit. And you know what you just said there about you wouldn't be the parent of your child. That's already here, because we know that social services in this country are stealing tens of thousands of children a year from mothers who've done nothing wrong. Often they use what do they use? Potential of future harm, future emotional harm, and all of this bollocks. Yeah.
You put a sign for Brexit up in your window.
Yeah.
Come in and take you. If they think you've been, if they have teachers ask children, what sort of programs do your parents watch? And or do you listen to on the wireless? If they say, "Oh, my parents like listen to the Richie Allen," bang, go and collect the kids because the parents aren't good parents. If you think about this, everything that I've said, you can see where it's happening bit by bit. Healthcare being destroyed. The National Health Service being turned into a National Death Service. It was not a coincidence. This is all part of the plan to take us to the next bit. We are going, people who look at China and think, oh, I wouldn't fancy living there. China now is what we are heading for very quickly. This is the biggest war any of us have ever fought. And if we don't win this war, we are sunk, because they will come after us, they will vaccinate us, the masks and social distancing, you can have as many vaccinations as you like. They are not going to take away the masks and the social distancing.
No, they're not.
Part of it. And then, incidentally, you talk about owning kids. They own you, because the default position now is if they want to take your liver or heart when you've died, or when they think you've died, they're entitled to do that. One of the aims of all this, of course, is to take us to the social credit score. When I first heard about the social credit score in China, which I think was about 10 years ago, I thought, what a wonderfully stupid thing. Only the Chinese could do that. But you look at what they're doing. What they do is, if you misbehave, you start off with so many points. I don't know, say 1,000. It isn't, I can't remember what it is. But you start off with so many points, 1,000 points. And everything you do, which is good, gives you more points, and everything that you do is bad, you lose points. So if you're a bad citizen, then you lose some points. Well, what does being a bad citizen? Well, being a bad citizen is having a motor car, or having a powerful motor car, having a big motor car. Having an electric car is good at the moment, but it won't be good for long, because they don't want any cars at all, and there isn't going to be enough electricity.
Having too many people in your house, having too much red meat, driving to the countryside too often. Absolutely.
Yeah. Spending you're buying too much alcohol in your shopping, buying too many cigarettes in your shopping, traveling too much, flying too much, having too much, borrowing too much money. And what happens then is that you get negative points. And these passports, they don't need vaccines for these passports. They're going to give us all passports like the Chinese. And if you want to travel, they'll have a look at your passport and they'll say, oh, no, you were late with your tax form, or you've been done for speeding. You can't have good broadband and you can't travel. You better do some charity work and give some blood and have a few more vaccines.
Yeah, so the state becomes some austere stepfather who really doesn't like you very much. That's what happens then, isn't it? Yeah. That's
what the social credit score is all about. It's happened in China, and if you think about it, it's happening here. Smart meters. If you have a smart meter in your house and you think, oh, I've got my electric car, I'm a smart meter, so I'm okay with the electricity. If they want to shut you off with a smart meter, they can turn your smart meter off from 1,000 miles away, probably 20,000 miles away. They can turn you off. That's what a smart meter's for. They tell you a smart meter so that you can save £3.50 a year. It is not. The smart meter's there so that they can turn you off. Being disabled is bad. They were putting DNR notices on people who were young but disabled. All was wrong. The only thing they'd done wrong was that they happened, unfortunately, to be disabled, so they had automatic DNR notices. That's in this country.
Unbelievable.
In the National Health Service.
And I remember covering the election of Alexis Tsipras in Greece, when the Greek people stupidly believed that he was going to deliver them from the clutches of the European Union. Of course, I knew better. I've been reporting on the European Union my entire life. I knew that he was a Trojan horse, him and Varoufakis. What the European Union did to Greece resulted in at least 2 cases of people who couldn't go to hospital being on life support machines. You know this. No, you know this to be true. On life support machines in their own homes, but the electricity bill wasn't paid. Smart meters. and they were switched off. And 2 people died in their own homes. Died because they couldn't pay the electricity bill. And I was laughed at when I talked about that, and I said, that'll come here eventually. And people said, go way out of it, you silly Irish bastard. That's never going to come to the UK. I said, just wait for it. Just wait for it.
And what happened in the last year, about 10 months ago, they said, don't treat the elderly.
Yeah.
And look at how all the people in care homes were killed. And look at the Liverpool Care Pathway. I think it was 360 people, old people in Britain, died of thirst last year.
Yeah.
Of thirst. Richie, they died of thirst.
Thirst.
60,000 old people a year die of the cold in Britain. But these were people of, the things that they're going to do through the social credit, if we don't stop this mask nonsense, this social distancing nonsense. I remember going to East Germany in the 70s, and I saw they had a big board up, a huge, what are those poster boards, the billboards, and it was full of pictures of people who'd worked well that week and had done good things for their factory. All these smiling faces. That was in East Berlin. When I got back from East Berlin, I remember writing an article about it, and they invited me to go back again. I didn't think I'd get out, so I didn't.
You weren't born stupid. No, thanks. I'll take a pass on that. We've got about 5 minutes left on tonight's show. Everything you said there, I was that radio presenter and producer in the mainstream that was incredibly dismissive and very discourteous to people over the years. Many of them, like yourself, with the medical background and the brains. I was discourteous at times and I just ignored. Nobody coerced me. I went looking. Everything you've discussed here tonight is a genuine agenda. It's a real problem. It's happening now. It cannot be ignored. And I say that to anybody who's listening to this for the first time. Everything from the child stealing state to the chemtrail program to the depopulation of rural areas to smart cities to human settlement zones. It's all true, people. It's in their own documentation. I know it sounds crazy, and I know you don't want to face it, but it's absolutely true. It's happening right now in front of your eyes.